All right, so today we're going to look at a university course that basically just threw out the traditional playbook. And it all centers on one really interesting question. What happens when student work is designed to last forever? This is the story of BHLTH 515, and it's a really fascinating experiment in higher education.
So let's start with a question to really get you thinking. I want you to just think back for a second. All those assignments you've ever done, the essays, the presentations, all those problem sets. Now, what if none of that work was, well, disposable? What if instead of ending up in a digital trash can, it actually added real lasting value to the world?
Okay, so that really provocative idea, it's right at the heart of a course called BHLTH 515. It's a graduate course at the University of Washington. And the instructor, Todd Conaway, he specifically set out to build a class where the students' work would have a life, a real purpose, long after the semester was over. And this quote, this is from the very first video he sent to the class. It just captures the entire philosophy perfectly. He said, "I want you to be able to lift up your work in a way that others can experience it." So right away, it's clear this isn't just about turning something in for a grade, right? It's not creating something meaningful that can be shared and actually used by a much wider community.
And, this wasn't some new fleeting idea for him. Todd Conaway's approach is built on literal decades of experience. We're talking over 25 years. Long before it was even a thing, he was in the trenches, helping students build public websites to share what they were learning. So this whole philosophy of student creation, it's deeply embedded in his teaching DNA. So how did he actually build this thing? Well, the design wasn't random at all. It was actually standing on three really powerful educational pillars, and they all worked together to create this totally unique learning environment. The first pillar is something called open pedagogy, and this right here, this is the direct answer to that question we started with. The whole idea is that instead of doing disposable assignments, students create what are called renewable assignments. They're building resources that don't just vanish after they're graded. No, they live on to actually help future students and even the general public. Okay, next up is the pedagogy of care. And this one is so important. This philosophy is all about the idea that real learning happens when students feel supported, respected, and genuinely safe. It's about building trust. It's about prioritizing the human relationship between the teacher and the students. And as we're going to see, this was absolutely the secret sauce that made the whole public work thing feel safe and empowering instead of scary.
And the third and final pillar is what's known as high-impact practices, or HIPs. Now, these aren't just trendy ideas. These are a set of well-researched, proven teaching methods that are known to boost student engagement and success. For this class, the focus was really on two big ones: collaborative projects, and the big one, the creation of a final e-portfolio. Okay, so theory is great, right? But what's really interesting is seeing how all these big ideas were actually translated into a practical week-to-week structure for the students. Like, what did they do every week?
Well, the whole course was built around this simple, repeatable weekly rhythm. Every week, students had four main things on their plate. First, a really low-stakes check-in on a shared digital corkboard. Second, read and publicly comment on an article. Third, go explore a new digital tool. And fourth, make some progress on that big final e-portfolio project. This created a really clear, super manageable structure.
But this commitment to being open went even further. I mean, the course wasn't hidden away on some lockdown learning system. No, it lived on a public Google site. And get this, all 18 students were given editor access. Just think about that for a second. They weren't just learning in the course, they were actively building it together, in public.
Now, you might think that sounds like chaos, right? But it was the complete opposite. This wasn't a free-for-all. The design was incredibly intentional. Every single activity, from those weekly tool explorations all the way to that final portfolio, was carefully mapped to a specific, official learning objective for the course. What you get is this powerful fusion of student freedom on one side and real, clear academic purpose on the other. So, we get to the big question. Did it actually work? I mean, all these great ideas sound nice, but what was the result? Well, we have a ton of data straight from the students themselves, from the official university evaluations to their own really detailed final reflections. Let's dig in and see what they had to say. All right, first, the official numbers. And they're pretty staggering. On the official end-of-quarter university survey, a remarkable 92% of students rated the course as a whole as either excellent or very good. I mean, for anyone who's seen these kinds of evaluations, you know that a response like this is, well, it's truly exceptional. And then look at this, a 4.9 out of 5.0 for the instructor's contribution to the course. This isn't just a high score. This, right here, is the direct result of that pedagogy of care we talked about earlier. That deep focus on support, on empathy, on building trust, that's what earned this absolutely incredible response from the student. But the numbers only tell part of the story. The written feedback tells an even richer one. Take this student, for example, who said, "I am walking away truly being better at utilizing technology and, most importantly, more confident at using technology in my projects." And that's the key, right? It wasn't just about learning some tools, it was about gaining the confidence to actually use them. That is a huge leap. And this next one, this gets right to the very heart of the whole experiment. Remember disposable assignments? Well, here's a student saying, "I will actually use this for future employment opportunities." The work wasn't disposable, it was valuable. Their portfolio wasn't just for a grade, it became a tangible asset for their career. That's the power of a renewable assignment, right there in action. And what about that sense of community? This quote just captures it perfectly. A student wrote that the class was more engaging and community-oriented, which I think is fantastic. Better learning takes place in community. So by building the course together, out in the open, they fostered this genuine sense of community where, like the student said, better learning could actually happen. Of course, no experiment is ever perfect, and this one's no exception. The student feedback was so valuable because it also gave some really clear, constructive ideas for making this innovative course even better. So let's look at the key lessons learned. So the feedback was incredibly clear and consistent. On the what worked side, students absolutely loved the public portfolio project, the instructor's constant accessibility, and that clear weekly structure. But now look at the ideas for improvement. What's so interesting is that they aren't suggestions to tear it all down. Instead, the students basically wanted more of this, just earlier in their program, maybe with a little more guidance along the way. And this one quote, which was echoed by so many of the students, was probably the single most powerful piece of feedback. "My only regret is that I wish I'd have taken in earlier on in the program because I would have produced better assignments." Just let that sink in. They found the skills they learned so valuable that their biggest regret was not having them sooner. They realized this one course could have helped them do better work across their entire degree. And really, that brings us to the biggest takeaway of all. The BHLTH 515 experiment shows us exactly what can happen when you shift from a model of just delivering information to one of true partnership. When you trust students, when you treat them as co-creators of knowledge, it leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? If this is what students can create, what other incredible potential are we leaving untapped in education?